Well, I'm here live streaming once again. This is a behind the scenes video. What is that? I'm hearing some very loud noises from my phone. Well, I'm here live streaming once again. Feels like there's some sort of a mechanical noise in here. I do have a fan running, but that's about it. Anyway, this is behind the scenes for Sunday, July 21st. As you can see, doing a live stream is not second nature yet. I don't really know what I'm doing. So a YouTubing live streaming expert gave me some advice because I had a big failure. Well, every time I've done a live stream, I've done something wrong. The very first time that I did one, my microphone battery ran out of power and I didn't notice. So I was live streaming for about 10 minutes without any audio and I didn't realize it. So that was the first big mistake. The second time I did a live stream, I learned that if you go into an enclosed area, like with cement walls and you're outside, that cuts off your mobile internet. So then it starts stuttering and lagging and freezing and things like that. So if you're live streaming outside, you kind of have to think about your mobile internet connection. You can't really go into buildings, down into the subway, things like that, because you're going to lose your mobile internet and you're going to lose the live stream. And I never thought about that at the time. Plus, I learned that when you're live streaming outside, you're limited by your GoPro's power because you only have one battery in your GoPro. And when that battery dies, the live stream is over because you can't pull the battery and put in a new one and continue the live stream. So you're limited to one battery unless you can figure out some kind of a power bank option. Or GoPro has the GoPro Volta, which is a hand grip with a battery built into the grip, and other companies make them as well. So if you really wanted to get serious about live streaming for a long time outdoors, I think you'd have to work out some sort of a battery grip as well, unless you do short ones and one battery is enough. Anyway, there are a lot of things to figure out. And then on my very first live stream on Planet Doug, total failure, because for whatever reason, when I opened up the live chat window, which I have open right here, there were no comments, no questions, nobody was saying anything in the chat. So I just assumed that nobody was watching and that nobody had left a comment because the window was empty. There was nobody there. So I figured I was just talking to myself, which is normal for me. So I just kept doing the live stream and I was talking about my lunch and whatever thoughts were on my mind at the time. And then later on, I got all these comments from people saying, why weren't you interacting with your viewers? What's wrong with you? Don't you know that in live streams, you're supposed to interact with your viewers? That's the whole point. You know, what kind of a dummy are you? And then I had to tell people, it's like, I didn't see any comments. I had my phone open in front of me and I checked it all the time and there were no comments at all. So there was nothing to reply to, right? So now that I learned that, the expert who's been giving me advice gave me the suggestion of having two phones. So I can have one phone running the live stream, the GoPro Quick app, and I can monitor the stream here, the technical side, and then I can have another phone that is open to the live chat window. And that's what I have right now. But again, if anybody has left a comment, it's not showing up on my window right now, but maybe I have to do something here. Like I don't know how to go anywhere else. So anyway, there's a blank chat window. So to be honest, this in my mind is just a normal behind the scenes video. I don't really have to do it as a live stream. feels a bit weird to do it as a live stream, to be honest, because I would also, if I do live streams, I'd like to do them on a regular basis and have a schedule perhaps, or at least have a notification about what time I'm going to do the live stream. That makes the most sense, obviously. And I don't know how to do that. As far as I can tell, you can't do that with a smartphone and a GoPro. If that's all you have, you can't schedule a live stream in advance. So I can't say there will be a live stream at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and send that out as a scheduled notification, and then at 2 o'clock I start the live stream. There doesn't seem to be any way of doing that as far as I can tell. So I'm still working out all the kinks in this live stream business. And there are probably a dozen other things that I will learn very quickly. So, once again, if anybody has left a comment on the live chat, I don't see it. There's nothing there. And I don't know how to refresh the screen. I don't know how to do anything else. I'm going to try and go very slowly here and work through these technical problems on screen, because as I said, this is a bit of a live streaming test. And so what I'm going to do is maybe look for it even on my tablet as well. So I'm going to go to Planet Doug behind the scenes as if I'm another visitor, and then, because as I said, this is a bit of a live. Turn that off. And yeah, there is the live chat window there, and there are no messages. So that's fine. I'm just going to continue on with the topics that are on my mind. And the first one is that I booked my flight. My visa for Vietnam is expiring on July 30th. I think that's a Wednesday. Not this Wednesday, but the following week, Wednesday, July 30th. And I decided to fly out back to Kuala Lumpur, and I booked a flight on July 29th, the day before. In order to maximize my time in Vietnam, it makes a lot of sense to just book it for the 30th. That's the last day of my visa, so why not book the flight for the 30th? But that's pretty risky. So many things could go wrong with the flight. I missed the flight is canceled, there's bad weather, who knows? But at least booking it for the 29th, it gives me at least 1 day of wiggle room. So if something goes wrong with the flight and I can't get out of the country by the 29th, at least I have the 30th. I can try again. So waiting until the very last day is probably not a very good idea. And the last time I did a live stream, I felt a little bit awkward about going like slowly, taking a drink of coffee, things like that. It feels like that's kind of downtime in a live stream. But this time, I'm just going to try to relax. And if I want to have a sip of my instant coffee, I will. And that's what I'm going to do right now. And that long sip of coffee would normally be edited out in the normal behind the scenes video. But since this is a live stream, I can't do that. So I had a bit of not a lot of adventures booking the flight. It actually worked out pretty easily. You could think that I'm leaving it to the last minute because it's only 8 days away, and you'd think you might want to book your flight earlier than that. So I was pretty pleased. I went on to the AirAsia website. I have the AirAsia app on my phone. So I opened up the AirAsia app and I looked for flights on the 29th. And there were a whole bunch of them leaving at different times of the day. And the price was the same. It was always about, the base fare was 233 ringgit one way, Saigon to Kuala Lumpur. And I think that was the equivalent of about $50 US. And that's the base fare. I interrupt this live stream because I did get a comment, so at least that tells me, the live chat window is working this time. So I got a greeting from California, from Cal1115, and greetings to California. Welcome to the behind the scenes live stream, the fourth live stream of my life, another live stream test as I figure out all the ins and outs of doing this. So I was looking at all the flights to Kuala Lumpur, and they were all the same price. Like 10 days ago, 233 ringgit. The next day, every single day, the price was the same, about $50 US. And then once you book the flight, and I got all the taxes and the fees, and I got the value pack, which means with the value pack, you get check-in one bag, 20 kilograms, a meal, seat selection, insurance, etc. Put all that in. I think the total cost of the flight, Saigon to KL one way, was 343 ringgit, if I remember right, somewhere around $70 US. And then as I was booking it, I remembered I had a credit with Air Asia because long ago I booked a flight out of Sumatra to Malaysia. I booked it on Air Asia, and then my circumstances changed and I canceled that flight. And to my surprise, I was able to cancel it and get a credit. So in fact, whatever I paid for that flight, I couldn't get a cash refund. That's not the way it works. But I was able to get an Air Asia credit. And I remembered I had that credit sitting on my Air Asia account. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how to access it. But as I was booking this flight to KL, I thought, I can pay for this with a credit, maybe. So I went roaming around on the app, on the payment section, and I did find they had it in Indonesian rupiah, actually. It said, you have a credit of 1,116,000 Indonesian rupiah. So I thought, how much is that? Because I've completely forgotten. It turned out that credit matched my flight perfectly. At least in terms of using the credit, it did. To be honest, I think the credit was more than my flight. But because I used the credit, I think the Air Asia system said, well, you have to use all of it. You don't have a choice. So it doesn't matter how much the flight was, you use up all of that credit all at once. So I ended up losing a little bit of money, a few dollars or something. But it was really nice to be able to get a flight and pay for it with an online credit. Of course, it was still my money. I had spent that money a year and a half ago, but it felt like I was getting a flight for free. So I did that. I paid for the flight. Everything went fine. And then I checked in online. And the only wrinkle that I saw in the system is that, I checked in online. I got the e-boarding. You download the boarding pass to your phone. So you've got the QR ways of. You don't have to print out a boarding pass. You don't have to check in. You check in online. You've got your e-boarding pass. You're feeling like everything's good to go. But of course, it never really works out that way in real life. And when I looked at the boarding pass, my e-boarding pass, it said right at the from your departure airport, you can't use the e-boarding pass. We've given you one. Here it is at that airport. You have to go to the Air Asia check-in counter and you have to check in as normal with an agent and then get a physical paper boarding pass. So that's always how it works, right? But as far as I can tell, everything in Saigon, I can get there by local bus, airport bus, no issues with that at all. And I believe I chose a flight that leaves at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, gets into Kuala Lumpur 6 or 7 in the evening. So so far everything is working out pretty well. I haven't booked any and then next thing I was figure out how to get to Saigon, because I'm not even in Saigon right now. I booked this flight while I'm here in Dalat, and I have to get down to Saigon, and I did that this morning. I went online and I was trying to figure out how to book a bus ticket. I've done that one time in Dominic just started watching my 4-hour magnum opus. I had a 4.5-hour behind the scenes video a couple of days ago, but then he got the notification of this live stream. So welcome, Dominic. And Roy Goad said, can you chat more about Dalat with your thoughts on the town, please? Yeah, I can do that easily in a minute. So yeah, the next thing I needed to do was book a bus from Dalat to Saigon. And I came up here by bus, but I didn't do that. That was arranged for me by Daryl from the Wander Eats YouTube channel. Whole trip up to Dalat. And then he made all the arrangements. So he was booking hotels, he was booking the bus, everything like that. So I didn't have to do anything. And we ended up coming up to, I think, a zine. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule, but here in Vietnam, it seems like you've got the big sleeper buses, and that's basically what you would call sleeper bus, which are like a short bus, and they have about 9 seats in them. And it seems like you're booking a limousine bus, a small one with 9 big lazy boy chairs in it. And then if you book one of the big ones, you're going to get a separate cubicle with privacy curtains and a seat that lays down completely. It's hard to tell what's going on. I think the connection has been reestablished. So that's also something about a live stream I didn't realize. I assumed if you lost a connection, it would be gone forever, and then you'd have to reconnect. But when you lose the connection, it seems to try to reconnect on its own. So that's a good thing. But I don't know why it's connecting so often. It shouldn't be doing that. But anyway, so I was in the morning, and then when I was looking at all these options online, I was looking at a website. I don't know how to say the name. It's, I think, XERXE or something like that. I used it once before, and then it's like an aggregator of all the different bus lines. And I found leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it seemed to be reasonable. It may even be the same company that I used to come up here with Daryl, a company called Ben Trey Limousines. And when I saw the listing, it had a big notice in English saying, we are very comfortable, something about we have experience dealing with foreign customers. So we have enthusiastic English-speaking staff, and had a lot of specific information for English speakers. And I thought, okay, that's probably a good thing. Leaving at 9 o'clock. The first one I found was leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it went the whole day until like 6, 7 o'clock at night. When I was just about to book that one, even though it was a company, they had a bus, a limousine, leaving at noon and getting in at like 6 o'clock. So I thought, well, that sounds pretty good to me. Leave later in the day, leave at noon, and then you're still getting in the early evening. So I booked that. It cost 450,000 dong. I think the cheapest bus you could get for this trip, this one is 450, and it does feel a bit weird. Yeah, lost the connection again, but I'm back. With my travel history, it still feels weird to me to be in a country like Vietnam, which I think of as still very traditional and agrarian, and that's my image of Vietnam. And I'm back. Yeah, this live stream is not going that well in terms of staying connected. I don't know what it's like out there in the real world. Connecting, disconnecting, and disconnecting again. 450,000 right now. Service, incredible chairs, massage features, and they're going to be dropping me off right in the heart of District 1 in Saigon. I don't even have to make a trip from the Western bus station across Saigon in rush hour. So it's an amazing, luxurious trip, and I think that's about $20 US, maybe, something like that. So it's a very good value for that amount of money. But at the same time, in the old days, whenever I was backpacking around Southeast Asia or bike touring, you would never pay $20 for a bus ticket. Everything back in those days was $5, $2, $1. So it feels weird to me these days to be in Vietnam and, oh, I want to take a bus to Saigon, and I end up booking a luxury limousine bus for $20, $25. It's just weird. I'm not accustomed to the modern Vietnam as yet, and modern prices and the incredible service that you get. Because when I traveled in Vietnam before, it was going to the local market where they have these broken down old vans that look like they're 50 years old and they're barely running anymore. Everything is broken on them, and they just pack in as many people as possible, and they fill the roof with luggage, and then the goats get on and the chickens get on. That's my memory of traveling in Vietnam. So the new Vietnam is a big, big surprise. Yeah, it's really something. But anyway, I booked it. And so I booked it on Tuesday, the 23rd, leaving at 12 o'clock at noon, getting 6 in Saigon, and then I have a few days in Saigon before my flight to Lumpur. And Daryl from Wander Eats, he's arriving in Saigon tomorrow, and Sean, from the Frugal Wanderer YouTube channel, he's in Saigon right now. So I'll be meeting up with him and meeting up with Daryl when I get there. I was planning on going back to Saigon earlier than this, but things kind of spun out of control here in Dalat, as they always do. And as I talked about before, I had a bit of a disaster 2 or 3 nights ago because my laptop just broke down. It just shut down and it won't turn on anymore. So I think I wore it out, the poor thing. So just dealing with adjusting from not having a laptop anymore to trying to do everything on my smartphones. I just wasn't ready to pick up and go to Saigon just yet. I had to stay here and just sort of work through this problem a little bit. And I got kind of interested in learning how to do live streams. So I stayed here for a few more extra days, and I'm getting back to Saigon later than I thought. So that's what's going on Planet Doug in terms of arrangements. Bus to Saigon, flight to Kuala Lumpur on the 29th of July. Yeah, as Roy Goad said, things have improved immensely in most countries except maybe Philippines. Yeah, I've seen that everywhere. I was talking to Daryl from Wander Eats about some of my experiences, and I was in the Philippines a few years ago, and that was kind of the beginning of this trip that I'm still on right now, technically. And when I flew into the Philippines, I was surprised to see how much it had changed even there. You're right, Roy, that not nearly as much as Vietnam. I think the Philippines, you can still have a classic backpacker, independent adventure style travel experience. Whereas here in Vietnam, it's almost hard to have that experience because you go looking for a bus and your options are luxury sleeper bus or luxury limousine bus. The normal, the older style ramshackle buses, I don't even know if they exist anymore. And everything is so modernized because even booking the bus ticket, normally I would go to the bus station and buy the ticket when I get there. Or I would go there the day before, figure out how to get a bus ticket, buy it in person. But now, of course, I bought it online and then I had to pay for it online. And when I did this before, they accepted PayPal. After a lot of fuss and a lot of security hoops to jump through, I paid for it using PayPal. This time, there was no option to use PayPal, and I couldn't use any other payment. I don't have anything else. So it's either PayPal, cash, or my one credit card. And I don't like using my credit card online for these kinds of purchases because there's such a risk of it getting blocked or getting scammed or hacked or whatever. Since I have only the one card, I really have to protect it. If I don't have a backup credit card right now, so I don't like to use it, but I had to use it to pay for this bus ticket. And then my bank in Canada really freaks out most of the time. And what they have to do, the only way I can use my credit card, they have to send me a security code. And then they give me two options. The one they want to use, they want to phone me. They want to give me a phone call to give me the security code, but they will only call my home phone number, my residential phone number in Canada. And I kind of sort of have one of those, but I'm not there to answer the phone, so I can't use it. So I tried to set up an email account that my bank is happy with. But it gets funneled through an old website of mine, and the email through that website is so pernickety. Who knows if it's ever going to work or not. But this time I just crossed my fingers and I said, send me an email, and I got it. So I got the security code and I managed to put it in, and it was just under the wire because when I started the booking process for the ticket, I had 10 minutes to pay for the ticket or I'd have to start all over again. So I'm rushing through the system and the clock was counting down and I'm like waiting for the email, waiting for the security code. Come on, come on. I'm looking at the clock, come on. And I got the code and I quickly typed it in and I just beat the countdown clock. So it all worked out in the end. So yeah, that's all set up. But hey, I was talking about the Philippines, about how when I went there, it wasn't as advanced and it hadn't changed as much as Vietnam. But I remember I was on my bicycle at the time and I just comfortably went off on my bike thinking, oh, I'm just going to find a backpacker hostel for $5 a night, single room, shared bathroom down the hall, fan only. Very simple, very cheap. I'm accustomed to that kind of accommodation. But in the Philippines, I couldn't find it anymore. Like outside of the cities, in the small towns, everywhere I went, the level of accommodation had gone up and up and up. And I think one of the reasons for that is that Filipinos themselves have a lot more money to spend, a lot more disposable income. So tourism inside the Philippines has exploded as Filipinos are traveling around inside their own country when they go on a holiday. And because it is their holiday, they're looking for comfort. They want a hotel with air conditioning and comfortable beds and windows and a swimming pool. So there's this pressure on the hotel systems in the Philippines to provide more and more services, and the prices are going up and up and up. So I really struggled finding low budget accommodation that would fit into my budget and into my sense of being on an adventure. Somehow it felt like staying in a nice hotel. I was like, I thought I was off on a travel adventure, and now here I am on a holiday. And it just felt weird. It was like out of balance with my expectations. And even the foreigners I met were different, the other travelers, because people were not traveling in the same way. Everybody was part of a couple. All the people I met traveling were all couples. There were no more of the independent travelers anymore that I ever ran into. And every time I saw them, everybody was deep into their phones and their tablets, and they were FaceTiming with friends and family back home. Every time at the end of the day, instead of hanging out with other backpackers and talking about what you did that day, everybody just came back to the hotel or wherever they were staying, and they just all got onto their devices, and then they were being social with their friends and family back home. And then I was wandering around looking for people to talk to, and never found them because nobody was open to that anymore. And in the old days, when you're really trying to save money and you're traveling on your own, you would meet up with other independent travelers. You might meet on the local bus, and you know you're going to the same town, and you say, hey, do you want to share a room? And we can cut the room cost in half. But that never happens anymore either, because you just don't meet people in the same way. And everybody arranges their accommodation in advance. Even I do. Before I go to Saigon, I'm going to book my room before I get there. And it's a whole different world. Everything has changed. And I'm not regretting that. I don't think all the changes are bad or anything, but it's a different world that we live in. So if Roy is still there, he might be waiting for me to talk about Dalat, so I'll do that. To be honest, most of my experiences here date back to when I first arrived, because I came up here with Daryl from was here. All we did was go touring, because Daryl had three days, maybe 3 full days here, and that was all the time he had, and he wanted to make the most of it. So even the day we arrived, we came up here by night limousine, and we got dropped off at the hotel, and within minutes we got a scooter from the hotel. So we arrived at something like 7 o'clock in the morning. By 8 in the morning, Daryl and I were on a scooter and just zooming around Dalat and exploring, and the city made a really positive impression on me in every way. Beautiful setting, very green, hills around it. We're up in the mountains here, so you really have a sense of being in the hills, being in the mountains. Then even when you're in the city, you're always going up and down, whether you're walking or you're on a scooter. In places like Kuala Lumpur or Saigon or Bangkok, it's just flat in all directions. So you never get that sense of being at the top of a hill and getting a beautiful vista of like the urban landscape below you. But here you get that all the time. Everywhere you go, walking, on a grab motorcycle, on a scooter, you're constantly going up and down. And then the city kind of opens up, because you get up to the top of a hill and it's like, oh wow, you see the city below you, and then you go down into that valley and back up the other side, and everything around you is on hills around you. So you see a lot, and you get a much better appreciation for the city that you just don't get in Saigon. In Saigon, you only see what's right in front of you, because there's no view beyond the buildings around you. But in Dalat, you do get that. And where Daryl and I went when we first got on the scooter, we headed towards the downtown area, and the downtown core is situated around a beautiful, big lake. Very, very nice. I was so surprised about that. And again, it made sense. And when I was reading about Dalat, I found out, of course, that it was established by the French during the colonial era, and the French picked it because of its beauty, because it's 1,500 meters in altitude, so it's nice and cool. So it was a place for the French to get away from the coastal cities on the weekends or for a week or whatever, and they go up into the mountains for their holiday. And it's nice and cool up here. And they chose this particular location because of the lake, right? That beautiful mountain lake. It's really, really nice. And Daryl and I went all the way around the whole lake on the scooter. We got a coffee in a coffee shop that was 3 or 4 stories high, and we sat on the balcony overlooking the lake. We could see everything there. And the lake is really nicely developed for casual activities, people riding their bikes around the lake, jogging around the lake. It has a pretty thin, like not a really wide park, but the entire lake is bordered on all sides with a park area. And then you can rent paddle boats, and there's restaurants and cafes everywhere around the lake. And it's like a long lake that twists and turns, and the road serpentines around the edge all the way around. So that was really nice. So you got the lake, and at one end of the lake is the core for the night. Everything is very nearby, within walking distance, I find. Very pleasant town. Something that surprised me is how busy it is. I was thinking Dalat was a small village, resort village, but it's a large city, and it's extremely popular for local tourism. You don't see that many foreigners. You see a scattering of tourists like me and backpacker style travelers, but for the most part, you're seeing big Vietnamese tour groups everywhere in these buses. And on the weekend, the gets jammed with visitors. And that, I mean, that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. I find it fine. I don't mind it at all. It adds to the interest of the town to see all the Vietnamese on vacation, having their holidays. And the weekends are very busy. So you go, it's a really big city for nightlife, restaurants, bars, coffee shops. So when you go out at night, everything is hopping, jammed with people, Vietnamese people, everywhere is full, and it has a really exciting vibe to it, I find. So, and and I guess there are a scattering of tourist attractions to keep you busy. There, you've got the night market, which is quite famous. I really enjoyed the night market because it's one of the most spacious night markets that I've come across lately, because it's quite wide, and on the weekends they block it off to traffic, so it truly is pedestrian only. And when I've been to the night market, I was so impressed because all the places serving little snacks and drinks, they all have their own seating area. And that's where most night markets let me down. You can buy all this amazing food, but then how do you enjoy it while you're walking, especially if you're holding a camera at the same time? You've only got one hand, and it's very awkward. But here in Dalat, every single little stall I went up to, they had little plastic tables and plastic stools right there. So I just sit down, and they bring me the snacks, and I eat them. I set up my camera on the table, and it was really nice. And then you got the night market road, but it's sort of in a slightly lower spot. And on every side of the market, there are hills going up, level after level. So you've got the night market, but then all around it, there are restaurants and seating areas and bars built up on the roads overlooking the market. So you can actually get up above the market and look down on all of the activity going on around you. So the market, very pleasant. And they have other attractions here, such as the Crazy House. Daryl and I went to the Crazy House, and I recommend it highly. And we went to this, there's places outside Dalat, so like there's a big down the hill, a little coast roll it with brakes, and you go zooming down like your own private roller coaster. Then they have zip lines out there. And I didn't do any of this, which I'll in it, but I think one of the things you can do here as well is rent a scooter and then just go exploring the countryside. And I found and waterfall. But if I had a scooter, I'd go look at them, and then you can go on guided tours all over the place in the countryside and do that sort of thing. And I haven't done any of that, mainly because once I settled down in Dalat, I realized I had a huge backlog of video to edit from Saigon and from the Mekong Delta and from Dalat, because when Daryl was here, I shot video every single day, and I guess I'm not very efficient. No big surprise there, but one video for me represents of editing, like 2 full days, dawn till 11 o'clock at night, and then I'm still not even finished. So I'm here with Daryl, and I shot video every single day, and then when Daryl left, I shot video and I had some shopping to do. I went to the night market, I went here, and I shot more and more video. So just the video from Dalat, I would need from the Mekong Delta. There was a disconnected just for a second, but I'm back. So I did look into renting a scooter. It's very easy to do here as far as I can tell. I had done it now that I'm about to leave, but I didn't, because I thought, well, if I rent a scooter, of course I'm gonna pile cameras onto the scooter, and I'm gonna put a GoPro on my chest harness, and I'm gonna get a 360 camera, and I'm gonna film all day, but when am I ever gonna have the time to edit that video? So I just said, okay, let's just stop shooting video. You're going crazy with the shooting of video. Let's just take a break and just edit video. And I thought I could just whip through the video editing really fast and get caught up, but I'm nowhere near caught up. So anyway, so yeah, Dalat, great city. I like it a lot. I was watching a video from Patty Doyle when he was in Vietnam, and he was interviewing some other YouTubers. I forget their name now. Like Pack Wanderers or somebody like that. It was a couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, and they were traveling with her father, I think, the scooter journey all around Vietnam. And Patty asked them, what was your favorite place in Vietnam? And the woman said, Dalat, without hesitation. She said Dalat was her favorite place, and she wished they had stayed here a lot longer, and I can understand that. Prices are also lower in Dalat, which I like. It's another reason I stayed here as long as I did. Again, going back to Saigon, of a hotel is essentially going to double compared to what I'm paying here. So I thought I'll just stay here. I like the city. See, there's a comment. Andy Tan says, hi Doug. Hi, Andy. Yeah, we're in touch, which is good. I was in touch with, not to tell secrets out of school, but I was in touch with Andy before when I was from Sumatra, and then I forgot how we were communicating. And unfortunately, that's a fact of life with me these days, because I'm generally so busy with YouTube and technology, and I'm communicating with people on so many different platforms on the internet. Occasionally I lose track of them. So I was trying to get in touch. I try to get in touch with people like Andy sometimes, and then I'm like, how? Were we emailing? Were we using Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube comments? And then more than I'd like to admit, I've lost track of people just because I can't remember how we were communicating. So if that has ever happened to someone out there, and I neglected to get back in touch with you after we were chatting, yeah, I apologize for that. But sometimes I lose track. I almost need a day planner with just every day keeping a social calendar and monitoring my communication with people. Just to keep track of it all would be a big job. But if Andy is still online, I am coming back to Kuala Lumpur July 29th, and who knows, maybe I can meet up in person with some people in KL that I've never had a chance to meet in person before. Martin, hi, greets from the Netherlands, Sneek Friesland. So yeah, hello Martin, and thank you, of course, for all of your help over all this time that I've been operating Planet Doug. Much appreciated. And yeah, so continuing with the live stream, again, kind of a behind the scenes video, more or less. And one thing I wanted to talk about as I shoot these like behind the scenes, I did a section, and I've gotten to where I would normally switch over to telling Planet Doug video stories. So Planet Doug stories. And that's what I'm going to do right now after a sip of my coffee. My coffee's getting cold. Ah, nice. I don't mind that it's getting cold. So, in my behind the scenes videos, I've been talking about all of this in Saigon day by day by day. And I reached the point where I went on what they call the water bus. And I haven't edited that video next. It's the very next video in my list. It's going to be edited. And I haven't told the story yet either, as far as I'm aware. So this all started with, I guess it started with my interest in when I was staying in Bangkok. By far are all the boats on the rivers in Bangkok. And they have tour boats, of course. You can get on any variety of tour on the river. And they take you to a lot of the big riverside tourist attractions. It's an amazing thing to do. I just love that. They also have different levels of tour boats. Below that, they actually have a transportation network on the river in Bangkok. It's identical in every way to a bus system. Like, you can take a local bus in Bangkok to go along the streets, but you can also go down to the rivers and take a local boat that goes up and down the river just like a bus would. And I would just spend all my time, like any chance I got, I would go down to the rivers, and you figure out how those water buses work. And they have a flag system, different colored flags to show you which boat goes where. Costs very, very little. And all the local people are using these boats to commute to work, to go shopping, to go to school, to go home again. So you as a tourist, you're welcome to hop on as well. Once you figure out how it's done, you just go down to the docks, hop on the boat, and comes around and sells you a ticket for 30 cents or 50 cents or whatever it is. And it's just so much fun to do. And I just love boats of any kind. So when I was coming here to Saigon and I saw that there were so many rivers and canal systems here, I thought, oh, maybe they have the same sort of same sort of boat system, and I can go up and down the rivers on all these boats. So I was looking into it, And because I was looking into it, people who knew about these things were giving me information. And as far as I can tell, they don't have a local transportation system here in Saigon. So it's not like Bangkok. They don't have a big network of boats, like local buses, just zooming up and down the rivers. That doesn't exist. People in Saigon basically ride their own scooters for the most part, and then there are local buses, but there aren't local ferry boats. But there is, as people told me, something called the Saigon water bus. And it's been a while since I took the water bus, so I don't have all the details in my head anymore. If I told this story the day after, I could really go into it in depth, but I just have a memory of it from weeks ago now. But I remember I always go through the same steps when it comes to doing anything. That someone says to me, oh, you should go on the Saigon water bus. It's amazing. And then in my head, I form a mental image of what I think the Saigon water bus is. And then people give me all this information. And usually my image of what it is completely wrong. Like the whole process of learning about the Saigon water bus and then researching it and then going there and buying a ticket and then getting on the boat, it's like a steady realization, like the light bulbs keep going off. It's like, oh, that's how it works. And then, oh, that's what the boats look like. Oh, that's how you... That my now will end up in the final video, I'm not sure. But I'm back, so I don't know exactly how that affects the final live stream. But anyway, I was just saying that, as often happens with me, I had a preconceived notion of what the Saigon water bus was. And then when I finally got there and got a ticket and had the experience, I realized my idea was completely wrong. And I often want to do these things a second time because so much of my energy goes into the logistics and figuring things out that I don't fully immerse myself in the experience the first time, especially when you fold in shooting video simultaneously. So much of my brain is involved in figuring out how to get to the water bus, how to buy a ticket, et cetera, and then how to shoot video. I want to do it again just because now I know how. I don't have to worry about it, so I could go back a second time and enjoy it. But anyway, what I found out where it is, for example. There's kind of a series of docks in this one area along the Saigon River. And some of those boats are like hydrofoils that go to places like Vung Tau. And then beside those are boats like the Saigon water bus, which goes up and down the Saigon River. And this Saigon water bus kind of serves a dual function. It really is a tourist boat. It's a boat that you take to go up and down the river and look at the cityscape of Saigon. And a lot of people do it at night. I think that's the most popular time to go, at night. And the tickets are usually sold out in advance. You can't just show up at night or in the evening and try to buy a ticket for the night trip because that's the most popular time. Everyone wants to go at night because all the buildings are lit up at night and you get a beautiful view of Saigon with all the lights. All the buildings are lit up. So if you want, that's one thing I learned. If you want to go at night, you have to book your tickets in advance. And you can go to their website. You can use a ticketing agent. You could probably use Klook. There's like a multitude of ways of booking tickets online these days. So it's a good idea to book the water bus in advance. And then you have your ticket on your phone and then you go down there. But I didn't do that because I went in the morning because I didn't want to go at night for one thing. I prefer to go in the morning when I'm feeling fresh. and I wanted to see things in the daylight. And on the Saigon water bus website, you can actually see how many tickets have been sold. So they have a schedule on their website. It's a really good website, and you can see the schedule for all the different departure times for the Saigon water bus. And then you can click on a certain boat and you can see how many tickets have been sold. Is it sold out? And then you can kind of make a calculation. It's like, oh, for the 10 o'clock boat, they still have 80 tickets available. So if you see that, okay, there's a pretty good chance that you can just walk to the dock, get in line at the ticket counter, buy a ticket, wait for the boat, and everything will be fine. So I would recommend going to the website, Saigon water bus, getting all the information, maybe buying a ticket in advance if you can do it, but you don't absolutely have to. Just look to see how busy, how many tickets have been sold per boat, and then you can probably just show up. And at this point, I forget the price, but the cost was minimal. It was a tourist boat, but it didn't have tourist boat prices. I remember being pleasantly surprised. I was expecting the cost to be hundreds of thousands of dong or something, in keeping with a tourist attraction price. But the pricing was more at the level of local transportation. It was more expensive than taking a bus, but not much more, to be honest. The pricing, I think, was within the range that a local person, and many people did do this, a local person could just hop on the Saigon water bus, and even though it's mainly a tourist water bus they call it, even though it's a tourist boat, you can use it to go commuting. So there were local people on it who were just using it to go upriver, and then they're going to take a bus from there. They're going from work to home, that sort of thing. So it's very inexpensive. So it's the sort of tourist experience in Saigon. If you were there in Saigon for 10 days, you could do it every single day. You could do it 10 times, every day. Just, grab a coffee at the local Starbucks. When you got a nice hot coffee in your hands, your morning coffee, just hop on the Saigon water bus and then drink your coffee while you go up the river and then come back again. It would be amazing. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. If you're in Saigon, hop on the water bus just for the experience. Doesn't cost very much. It's fun to do, and you get amazing views of modern Saigon. I've been talking about how Saigon has modernized, and when you're on the river, really very easygoing. And my perception of the experience, again, was completely wrong, because I was basing it on other boats I've taken, and I was really concerned about getting a window seat because I was so focused, because you actually buy a ticket with an assigned seat, and it's just like an airplane, 2 rows, 3 seats on each side. And I'm a YouTuber and I want to get video. I was really consumed with, I really have to get a window seat, and I wanted a window seat. Boat should I get on? Should I get the side, the right side, about all this? And when I bought the ticket, I tried to get a window seat. I don't think I did. I did. I think I did get a window seat, but it was on the right-hand side, I think. I can't quite remember. And then when I got on the boat showed up and we all got on. Nobody paid attention to assigned seating. Nobody cared. So even if you have an assigned seat number, chances, unless you are pretty aggressive and you go up to the person sitting in your seat and wave your ticket in their face, hey, that's my seat, see, 21F, that's I have the ticket, please. Because when you get on the boat, somebody's going to be sitting in your seat. Nobody pays any attention to the assigned seating. So don't worry about it. Just buy a ticket. Don't worry about the seat. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if you're going at night and it's a nighttime cruise and they're all Westerners who are more concerned about these sort of things and they chose a particular window seat specifically for the view, then maybe you'll see people getting their assigned seats. But when I went midday, it was almost all Asian people, a lot of Vietnamese. I think the majority were Vietnamese, but there could have been people in there from China, from South Korea. There's a lot of tourism in Vietnam from South Korea. So I'm sure there were a lot of South Koreans. And they just piled onto the boat and just sat down wherever they wanted to sit down. And nobody was paying attention to assigned seating. In fact, I think there was one other Westerner on the boat when I went, just one. And I'll talk about him in a minute because I had an interesting conversation with him. Quick check of comments. Andy Tan says, go back again. There is still a lot of places to visit. And I think Andy must be talking about Vietnam, and I agree very much. I mean, I haven't even scratched the surface. I spent almost all my time in Saigon alone. Then I went down to the Mekong Delta for 10 days, then back to Saigon, and then Dalat. And the main reason I haven't been anywhere else, again, is because of my concern about video editing, the amount of time I'd need to do that. But also, as I talked about before, I've been to Vietnam back in, I guess I figured out the year, it was 1995, my first trip to Vietnam, and that was back in the backpacker days, way back in the pre-economic boom days. And I did, at that time, I went to, not everywhere, but I went to Da Nang and Nha Trang and Hue and Hoi An and Hanoi. I've been to all those cities already. And I feel like I went there at the best possible time. I saw all of these places before modernization kicked in, before the modern tourism boom. So I do have a little bit of a hesitation, like revisiting these places in the modern era. I don't want to sort of ruin my memory of them. But at the same time, I'm not that concerned about it. The main reason I haven't gone there on this trip is time. Lack of time and money concerns, of course. But I would love to come back to Vietnam. And then maybe if I come back after Malaysia, come back on a second visa, maybe I can be smarter in every way, a smarter YouTuber, be more focused with my video, maybe a lot more live streams, even as I'm out exploring, rather than shooting 6 hours of video and then editing it later on. Maybe I can learn to be more efficient. Yeah, better balance YouTube and life. Maybe I can finally figure it out. And Roy Goad says, you can get a boat to Vung Tau as well through the mangroves. Okay. I don't know a lot about the boats to Vung Tau. I know Daryl from Wander Eats. He went there by boat, and he shot a whole video about the experience. And I think I saw the boat that he took, but I don't know if there are different types of boats, like slow boats, fast boats, expensive boats, cheap boats. I mean, I would love to go by local, cheap boat, go down in cargo class, big open decks where you can wander around everywhere. That would be ideal, but I have a suspicion those boats don't exist anymore. And Roy said, oh, you can get the boat from the center of Saigon. Yeah, I think that's the dock that I saw on the Saigon River. I walked by one dock anyway, and they had a big sign up for a Vung Tau. But there may be more of them, other boats that I'm not aware of. Yeah, and Roy says, the Vietnamese trains are very cheap too. It traveled from Saigon to Hanoi, and they have sleeping carriages. I would love to do that as well. I think if I had to pick how to travel in Vietnam, I would go by train. Like to go from Saigon to Hanoi, make that journey. I'd love to do the whole thing by train. So maybe that's something I can plan for and make it a little bit of a YouTube expedition even, because I've been watching a lot of videos from YouTubers who do the classic rent a scooter in Saigon and drive the scooter to Hanoi. But to be honest, what I see of their experiences in their videos doesn't really appeal to me. A couple of people that I saw, they stuck to the coastline, and they didn't seem to even shoot very much video of their riding on the scooter, because it was just a massive highway filled with trucks and buses. And it didn't look particularly pleasant. And they didn't even bother filming it. They wouldn't start filming until they got to the next town. I think if you rode through the interior, you can have your own personal adventure on a scooter. But I don't know, the videos I've seen like that didn't really get my excitement up either. But when I think about, and because as a YouTuber, I don't know, you mount your cameras on the scooter and now you're riding your scooter for 6 hours. Well, now you have 6 hours of video of you on your scooter. It's like, what the heck do you do with that now, right? It's the in-between moments that are more interesting in a video. So maybe scootering is not the best, unless you get to the far north, of course. Then you've got the famous Hajang Loop that everybody does. And then if you shot video about a scooter journey around the northern mountains, I think that would be better. But for Saigon to Hanoi, Saigon to Da Nang, Nha Trang, Hanoi, maybe trying to do that the whole way by train, that would be very interesting, and perhaps makes for very interesting content, YouTube content at the same time. Yeah, the trains. When I was here in Vietnam back in 1995, I did take a train. I cannot remember anymore from where to where. I'm sure I kept a journal about that experience, but it was a handwritten journal, and all of my handwritten journals are in tubs, plastic tubs in a basement back in Canada. And I've never digitized them or transcribed them, or I've never looked at them once. I'm assuming I kept a journal in Vietnam, but I don't even remember doing that. But yeah, I don't remember where I got the train, from what city to what city, how far I went by train. But I do have like 3 pictures of a train carriage in Vietnam and going to the train station. So I know that I did it. But yeah, that's definitely what I would like to do. So, going back to the Saigon water bus tourist boat, I talked about how you don't need to book a seat in advance. Well, you have to book a ticket, but you don't have to worry about your assigned seat most of the time. And anyway, I never sat in my seat at all. When I got on the boat, I went looking for my seat, and somebody was already sitting in it. It was a window seat. Yeah, it was. And there was somebody sitting in it already. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to bug the poor guy. And it turned out it didn't matter, because as soon as the boat started moving, most people poured out onto the back of the boat where there was a small open area. And that was where everybody went, because everybody wanted to get a selfie. And inside the boat, it's kind of closed in. You're just looking out the window. It's not very exotic or very beautiful. And if they wanted to take a selfie in there, it doesn't look good. So everybody took turns going to the back of the boat. You sit on the bench. You got the river behind you, the city behind you, and then everybody was taking selfies back there. Big, long selfie sessions, right? Big groups of family and friends, and everybody's taking selfies. And then you take a selfie of me, now it's your turn, give me your camera, I take a selfie of you, just everybody selfie, selfie, selfie. So I went back there, of course, because I had my GoPro in one hand and I had my 360 camera in the other, because I wanted both. And I can't remember how I handled audio. I think I was recording audio into the 360 camera, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I went to the back, and then I kind of hung out there for a while, and I was waiting. I didn't want to take over prime real estate, but I did want to get some video, because you know, professional YouTuber. I need some scenic video of the boat trip. So I eventually worked my way to the edge of the boat, the best spot, and then I put my 360 video up above the boat, and I had my GoPro running at the same time, I think. And then I did this almost as soon as the boat left the dock. So I got some really nice video of the downtown financial core of Saigon with all of the huge skyscrapers, and went by the big apartment complexes, buildings being constructed everywhere, the cranes. And I stayed there for a few minutes, got enough video of the scenery, went underneath these huge bridges, and then with the 360 camera, I can aim the camera up at the bridges as they go by. So I haven't done any of that video reframing or editing yet. I still have to do that. So I stood there at the railing of the boat for a while, and then when I thought I had my turn, it was time to let other people get to the railing, and then I pulled down my 360 camera and I went to the inside again, and everybody else went rushing to the railing because they knew that was the best place to get good pictures and get good selfies. So yeah, really good. I had a lot of fun tracking where the boat went on Google Maps, because it wasn't clear from the schedule. They had maps at the ticket counter, and I thought, I wanted to know, well, where does the boat go? How far does it go upriver? Where does it stop? Do I stay on the same boat, or do I get off the boat and get back on a different one? And I'll jump ahead there, and it turns out that the boat does something really interesting, because here's the Saigon River curving and winding, and then there's one big loop all the way around, and at the top of the loop there was a boat dock, and that dock, as far as I could tell, was the destination for the Saigon water bus. I knew that's where the boat stops and then turns around, so I just assumed the boat was going to follow the river around this huge loop. But everything I was looking at around me didn't match that. And I thought, it felt like we were going in the wrong direction entirely. I was really confused. But I eventually figured out that the Saigon River takes this huge loop, but then in history, at some point in history, somebody dug a canal that cut right across the base of the loop. So rather than going upriver and then around the loop, the boat went upriver, then cut through, and then went to that dock, and then turned around and came back through the canal. And it's like, now it makes sense. It's like, and one of the light bulbs went off, because I was completely mystified about where this boat was going. And what I learned is that you take the water bus to the final dock, and then you have to get off the boat. You don't have a choice. That's the terminal dock. Everybody off, everybody has to get off the boat. And then you get the same boat going back, but it's not leaving for like 45 minutes or an hour. And you see all this on the schedule. So you get to the terminal dock, get off the boat, do whatever it is you want to do there, and then you get back on the same boat, and then you have to keep your ticket, because your ticket gets you there and gets you back, and they want to see your ticket again when you get back on the boat. So now I have this all figured out. I could be a Saigon water bus tour guide, because I've got the whole thing figured out now. But the first time I did it, yeah, it took a lot for me to think about and to figure out. A little sip of cold instant coffee. And one thing about stream, by the way, is my GoPro does give me a time. So I have been live streaming for 1 hour and 17 minutes, and I should check my battery levels. Yeah, I've got lots of battery life. So I think my microphone, I should check my own audio. I haven't done that for a while. And you get the same boat going back, but it's not leaving. A message from Gilles. Greetings from France. Hello, Gilles. I think I have an email from Gilles that I have not responded to yet. This earlier, that There's so many ways to communicate with people, and I spend so much time editing video, I occasionally lose track of these things. I make a mental note, okay, I got an email or a message from this person or that person. I make a mental note to reply, and then by the next morning, I've forgotten. So I should have a system in place for dealing with that. I have to get even more organized. And Roy asked, did you go on any trips in the countryside around Dalat? And I talked about that already to an extent. Sadly, no. And I should have, I suppose, and I looked into renting a scooter, even hire a local guide. A bunch of guides here in Dalat approached me. So if you go walking around Dalat through the streets, and you're a foreigner like me, men will stop. People on motorcycles will just sort of stop beside you and introduce themselves, ask you where you're from, and they'll always end up being some kind of a tour guide, and they will offer you one-day tours through the countryside for X amount of money and this and that. And so I could have done that as well. Time pressures. It was mainly to do with video editing. If I rented a scooter or I went off on some kind of a day trip and I shot another 15 hours of video, it's like, well, when was I going to edit it? So yeah, lack of organizational power on my part, I guess. Yeah, I have to figure this out, I think. And to be honest, I didn't think it would take this long. I decided to just hunker down in Dalat, power through a bunch of video, and then I was going to go exploring. But I never even came close at it for now. It's the rainy... Oh, I lost the connection. It's back. It's the rainy season now. It's been pouring rain almost every single day. So I thought, okay, just don't worry about going any more traveling. Just cut it here, fly back to Malaysia, get reorganized there, and then return to Vietnam. Rest of Vietnam. So that was my logic at the time. Whether that was a good decision or not remains to see that. Oh, I was just apologizing to Gilles that I may not have replied to his email, but he said that I did 2 days ago. So there you go. My poor brain. I don't have enough brain cells to keep my life in order these days. And the Lighthouse Hunter says, hello, Mr. Doug. The Lighthouse Hunter from Malaysia, if I remember right. And I know the Lighthouse Hunter because I watched at National Park Dixon, where I walked to the park and then I went walking all the way through there. And I believe the Lighthouse Hunter posted a really good video with drone shots and lots of information about that park. And right now I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but he knows what I'm talking about. That is the Lighthouse Hunter. And just to wind up the Saigon water bus story, and that might be the end of my live stream, I mentioned that there was one other Westerner on the water bus. And for most of the trip, we didn't really interact. Sometimes you're not sure, is that person, maybe I thought maybe he was part of a group of Vietnamese people. You do see a lot of Western men that are married to local women in Thailand or Vietnam, wherever. And I thought he was part of a family at first. I wasn't really sure. And GoPro and my 360 camera that I didn't really have an opportunity to talk. I was busy tracking things on Google Maps, narrating, shooting video, taking pictures. But then at one point, I think it was just as we got to the end, happened to be standing near each other on the back of the boat, and then to him, some sort of an icebreaker comment. And then we ended up chatting for almost the whole rest of the boat. And then we got to the final dock and we both got off the boat. And I did some more filming when I was there. But when I was done the filming, I was chatting with him, and then we chatted on the boat all the way back again. And some up in the final video, I can't remember what I filmed. I don't think I filmed very much of that, maybe nothing. But he was very different from me because we were in the same age group, but in his life, as far as I could tell, I believe he was from Scotland or Wales, something like that. And he had lived a life where he was gainfully employed for most of his life and saved up a lot of money and had a retirement plan and a pension plan. And basically now he is retired and he has lots of money and he's using that money to travel around the world. And that's what he's doing now. So he's coming at, and I don't know, I think about this all the time. It's the classic, maybe it's the classic backpacking versus tourism discussion. Like, what is the better experience in a way? To travel as a backpacker on a very low budget, or to go somewhere on a holiday and have a couple $100s a day as your budget to spend, and which is the better way to experience a country. Obviously, I've always been on the low budget end of things. I've never had any money to speak of, which is just the way my life has gone. And then, so you sort of balance the pros and the cons. And of course, the benefit of a low budget lifestyle is you can travel longer. If you're spending $10 a day, you can be on the road for months and even years. But of course, if you're spending $200 a day, your trips tend to be a lot shorter. Though in this guy's case, it sounded like he had more than enough money that he could spend $200 a day and just travel for the next 5 years. He had that much money saved up, I think, from what I could tell just chatting with him. So it wasn't really a question of length, but somehow just talking with him and about his experiences, it was interesting to contrast our different experiences. So I was asking him, oh, when did you get to Vietnam and how long are you going to stay? And we're just basically trading travel stories, as everybody does when you meet another foreigner on the road. And then he was telling me things, but it was like the way he was telling me gave me the impression that he thought what he was doing was the only way, and there was no other way to travel. It was like he had never been exposed to independent style travel. So he was just telling me things and assuming that I did exactly the same thing. So when he started his trip, he was talking about, oh yeah, my travel agent booked everything for me. And then when I got into the airport in Saigon, then the limousine was there, took me to my hotel. And his hotel was whatever, $150 a night. That kind of life. And he's talking about the pool and the exercise room and the group tours that were all arranged in advance and car rentals and things like that. And then the way he was telling these things to me, again, it seemed like he assumed I had done all of that because that's what, in his mind, how else do you do it? So I was chatting with him, and at some point, of course, he asked me about my experiences and then basically how long. And I would say something like, well, yeah, I've been in Saigon for about 6 weeks now. And he's like, what? How can you be here for 6 weeks? And it's like, I don't know. I'm not married. I don't have a job. I don't have a house. I don't have a car. I'm staying in the cheapest hotel I can find. That's just how things are. And then it turns out he was in Vietnam for, I think, 6 days. And then he was going to fly to Dubai, and he was going to be in Dubai for 3 nights. And then he was going to be in Tokyo. because he had the money to be able to do this. And again, he thought that's how you travel. And when he started hearing my story, it was almost like he was seeing a new way of traveling that he wasn't even aware of. And things like you land at the airport, and then of course I took the bus, the airport bus from Saigon airport to District 1 right outside my hotel. And he was like, how did you do that? How did you? And so I just looked on the internet and I found out information about the bus and where you go to get it. And when I landed, I went looking for it. And he was like, well, the hotel, how did you find such a cheap hotel? Well, I looked on Agoda. And well, actually, in my case, of course, a YouTube subscriber booked that hotel for me the first week or 10 days that I was in Saigon. And then, of course, the YouTube subscriber to Planet Doug knows me, knows the kinds of places I like. And then he looked for something in the low budget range, right in the heart of the action. And, oh, Doug would like this place, and he booked it for me. And he was right on all counts. But if I were booking my own place, I probably would have booked that same hotel, because at the time it was the least expensive option and the kind of hotel that I usually look for. Double the cost of my hotel here in Dalat, but probably as cheap as you're going to get in Saigon. But this guy seemed to be relying on travel agents to book his hotels for him. And then he was going to country after country after country on kind of a lightning tour. And then I was thinking, man, if I had your money, boy, oh boy. And I wouldn't even think twice. I'd be in Vietnam for 6 months before you could blink. I'd do a 90-day visa. I'd fly out to Cambodia, come back in 90 days. And I'd be here for 6 months without batting an eyelash. But the very concept of being somewhere for 6 months just kind of puzzled him. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because it was an interesting conversation, and it was interesting to have two perspectives, and we were both on the same Saigon water bus that day, and it was an interesting conversation to have. Yeah, I've often thought that, I thought about this in general, about money. And again, this is not a new topic to me, and I've probably talked about it in the past, where you wonder sometimes, is it good or bad to have money? And obviously it's good to have money, but sometimes I do wonder if money changes how you experience things. So, story I often tell is ages ago when I went on a couple of bike tours in Canada and then in the United States. And then when you're out there on a bicycle, camping out every night, just riding across the country, unemployed, no home, nowhere to live, and you meet this was in Canada, so I'm meeting lots of other Canadians and Americans. And then people would often say to me things like, I wish I could do what you're doing. Or they might say, I wanted to do the sorts of things you're doing. So you might hear about people who wanted to save money to go traveling, and then they would get a job in Canada. And the idea for this traveling adventure was always in the future. So they would get a job, and then they say, and then I can always quit my job and then go traveling. But then after 1 year in that job, by then they bought a car, they've got a lease on their apartment, raise if they stay another 6 months, and now they're into a retirement pension plan. And of course, a lot of years go by, and then they never actually go on the trip that they were planning. And again, I'm not saying they did anything wrong. I think that's an amazing life to have, much better than the life I've led, to be honest. But it is interesting, the effect money can have on your travel experiences and your life experiences. And I remember talking to a lot of teachers in Canada who specifically chose to be a teacher because they had the idea that they would have every summer, both worlds, a good, reliable income, and then every year they can still go on a 2-month adventure somewhere in the world. But then 10 years go by, actually gone that they thought they were going to go on. But yeah, who knows? Yeah, just something that has been on my mind a little bit. So, looking at the comments. Leo Chaplin, greetings from Johor Bahru, Malaysia. JB would be a challenge for any vloggers to have enough exciting things to cover. Well, I don't know. Maybe a challenge accepted. I guess it depends how you define everything, because I'm not a very exciting person. For me, just to walk around the streets of Johor Bahru and go to one of the local markets, to me, that would be a typical sort of Planet Doug experience, I think, and I would enjoy it very much. To be honest, I've done not nearly as much traveling in Malaysia as someone like me should have, because I keep basically hunkering down in Kuala Lumpur. And I have a similar experience to Vietnam in that I came to Malaysia back in the days when I was a backpacker. So I've been everywhere in Malaysia already, but it was decades ago, again, when I was a very poor backpacker, as opposed to a very poor YouTuber. And then, so I've been to, people say, oh, you should go to Malacca, but I have already been to Malacca in my life, and I've had all the experiences there, and I've been to Ipoh and all, you know, the various places that people suggest. But considering the length of time that I've spent in Malaysia, I really should have broken free of Kuala Lumpur more often and spent time in Johor Bahru and Ipoh and these other cities that I can visit. Maybe I can do that on this visit. We shall see. And Roy Goad says, you are having a much better experience than money can buy. And yeah, I do agree with that. I'm sort of straddling the fence in what I'm talking about, whether it's good or bad, having money or not having money when you're traveling. And for me, I know that I have gotten a lot of really amazing experiences, kind of for two reasons. One, I never had much money, and that kind of fed into always staying in a cheap hotel in kind of a bustling neighborhood. And you have a lot of adventures because everything goes wrong when you're traveling on a budget, and then you're not hiring a car with a driver to take you out to go to a tourist attraction. You're trying to get there by local bus or by bicycle in my case. I'm thinking in particular when I went to Ethiopia, and Ethiopia was my first and my biggest international bike tour adventure. And I went there with a bicycle. And of course, that was back in the days before there was Google Maps and before Agoda. You can't book hotels in advance. And then I basically flew into the airport in Addis Ababa, and then I stayed at the airport all night because I arrived late at night, and I stayed the entire night getting my bicycle out of its box and putting it all together. And then when the sun came up, I rode my bike into the city, and then I went looking for a cheap hotel. I didn't have any information about where to go, and I just rode around the city looking, and I found a cheap hotel. And almost all of my adventures in the city of Addis came out of that cheap, crazy hotel that I first landed in. It was just such an experience. And then I moved next door to another low-budget hotel run by a family. I got to know the family really well, and then they helped introduce me to all kinds of things in Addis. So having no money contributed to having an amazing experience. And I know that if I'd had a lot of money and I stayed in the Hilton Hotel in Addis, the big expensive Hilton, which was there. I rode by it all the time. Obviously, you're not going to have the same kind of experience, because when you're in the cheap, low budget hotel, you know, there's no privacy, it's noisy, it's crazy, everything is broken, nothing works. Every time you step outside, you're just overwhelmed by people on the streets. You have no barrier. And again, at the Hilton, it might be kind of easy to settle into a little bit more of a cushioned experience. There's no reason you can't get out of the Hilton and go have all the adventures. But I know in my case, I actually need to be forced out of my comfort zone. It may not seem like it, but I do. And having no money kind of pushes you out there. And bike touring. I really do enjoy bike touring because, again, you don't have to go looking for adventures. You're on the bike in the middle of nowhere and adventures find you. And I do enjoy that. And it's not like you have to plan anything. You just wake up in the morning, get on your bike and start pedaling, and adventures will happen. And so those two decisions, well, a decision to ride by bike and then kind of a decision to be poor, because I'm from Canada, and had I chosen a different life path, I suppose I could have gotten an education that led to a good paying job. And it was my choice to be poor, basically. I made the decision to fly to South Korea and get a job as an English teacher. I made that choice, and I made the choice to really not go back and not look for a real job. So I guess having a low budget is a choice, and then traveling by bicycle can be a choice. And those two choices led to a lot of the best experiences of my life. Maybe at the time you might be thinking, these experiences are not that great, but then in retrospect, of course, you know you had a big adventure. So my bike ride in Ethiopia, my bike ride in Guinea, bike ride in Cambodia, bike ride in the Philippines, even bike ride across Canada, the US. Those are all the highlights of my life, right? So, yeah. And from Roy, I was in Cuba and met a guy who booked everything through a travel agent. He had an awful time. I was independent and had an amazing time with much less money. Yeah, I think that's a pretty common experience. I know that it's pretty common in Canada, at least it used to be years ago, to go to the Dominican Republic for a holiday. And there was a time I remember when Facebook was a new thing, and I used Facebook to get in touch with some old high school friends and even grade school friends, people that I grew up with and completely lost touch with. So I suddenly had access to the Facebook pages of men my age that I grew up with, my old friends from my childhood. And then I could see all their photographs. And then these people stayed in my hometown. I'm from Sarnia, Ontario, and they still live, these guys that I'm thinking of, they still live in Sarnia. They have an amazing life. They got a job in Sarnia. They've had the same job for 30 years. They got married. They have a house. They have a nice car, great pickup truck. And every year they go on a holiday to the Dominican Republic. And of course, this is a different type of holiday from what a YouTuber like me is looking for, because it's their annual vacation. They don't want adventure. They don't want discomfort. They have money in the bank, so they want a comfortable place to go with their wife. And they get together with friends. So 4 of them will get together, 4 couples, and they'll book 2 weeks at a resort in the Dominican Republic. Beach resort, beautiful pool, everything paid for, guided tours, all that kind of thing. But of course, that's a very different experience than I would have, than Roy would have on his trip going to Cuba. If I went to the Dominican Republic, of course, I'd be flying in on my own with a bicycle or with a knapsack, and then there you are at the airport, and then off you go. try to find a place to stay and travel around by local transportation. And I mean, that's the experience I would be looking for. And again, nothing wrong with going to the resort in the Dominican Republic. I would do it in a heartbeat, but I would kind of want both of them. I would want to, okay, let's go to this resort and have this amazing time at the resort, but I would also want to be able to escape from the resort and go off traveling at the same time. Two very different experiences. And the Jacob family, good day from Australia. Always love your content. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that the live chat window was working. When I went out to have lunch and I did a live stream on Planet Doug, and I looked at the live chat all the time, and a couple of times I tapped on the screen and reloaded, but I didn't see any of the comments, but now it is working, so that's good. THG wrote, all by yourself, do you feel lonely sometimes? And that's a question I've gotten, I think, throughout my entire life. And the answer is a very clear, very strong no. Maybe it's a personality thing. I don't get lonely. I never do. It's just not something I ever feel. And maybe it's connects with the habit I've talked about in the past, where for whatever reason, even at a very young age, I felt the impulse to keep a journal. So I've always had this perspective that I'm an outsider of my own life in a way. Like I'm more of an observer than a participant when it comes to life, and that can be a bad thing, but I'm a little bit of I'm inside my own head most of the time and observing things around me. And then when you start keeping a journal, it's almost like keeping that journal is your social life. And I kept a journal for years and years and years and years. Speaking of Ethiopia, Roy, if you're still online, when I was riding my bike in Ethiopia, to be honest, at that time, I had a deliberate plan to write a book. So when I planned my bike trip to Ethiopia, this was back in the days of travel books. People always told me they thought my writing was pretty good, and they kept saying, oh, you should write a book, you should write a book. So I thought, yeah, why not? So I went to Ethiopia, and my plan was to travel in Ethiopia and come out of it with a travel book to send to publishers. And so I go there, and then I'm keeping a journal every day. I do it all the time. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, before the sun was up, and then I'd write down all my stories from the day before. And then I get on the bike and I'm out there. And then whenever I'm in a little village or a town somewhere, and I pull over to the side to get something to eat or tea, amazing tea in Ethiopia at the side of the road. Everybody's there making the tea, and I'd pull over on my bike. And I try to write. But while I was doing that, I don't know if you had this experience when you were in Addis in Ethiopia, people are a little bit intrusive and in your face. So I never got any privacy. I'd be trying to write in my journal. I've got my maps out. I'm looking at my map of Ethiopia. I'm writing. And then people would just come up to my table, grab the map. They just pull it out of my hands. And they would look at me and go, give me, give me. They want me to give them the map. They take the notebook out of my hand, give me. They take the pen out of my hand. I had experiences in these smaller villages and towns. I'd ride in on my bike, total chaos. I mean, 150 people surrounding me, children in particular, following me everywhere I go, total chaos. I find a hotel, very cheap, very ramshackle kind of place. Move into the room, close the door, and I'm unpacking, and I'm thinking, I can write a little bit of my amazing Ethiopia travel book. And then out of nowhere, the door to my hotel room would just burst open and people would just come into my room, people who worked in the hotel, people who were friends of people who worked at the hotel, and they go around my room just picking things up. You know, I would probably have a Tim Hortons coffee mug because I had my own cook stove. I'm boiling water to make coffee. I've got all of them. I got a camera back in those days, film camera, on. And they roam around the room picking things up and going, give me, give me, give me. I started having to barricade my door to keep people out. And anyway, it became very difficult to write in a journal. I never had peace to do it. So I got this crazy idea. I end up in my life with a lot of crazy ideas. I need people to vet my ideas. I need people to slap me and say, that is so stupid. And I would go, oh yeah, you're right. But I get obsessed with certain ideas and then I do them no matter how dumb they are. And in this case, my dumb idea was to buy a tape recorder and keep my journal on tape as I'm riding the bike. So I bought one of those mini cassette recorders that used to be so popular for executives to speak into and then give the tape to their secretary to transcribe. I bought one of those and I bought boxes and boxes and boxes of these mini cassette tapes, 90 minutes each or 180 minutes each, whatever they were. And then in the morning, I put this microphone or a tape recorder on a strap. I had to build my own strap, put the tape into it, hit record, and then as I'm riding my bike around the countryside of Ethiopia, going up and down these insane mountains, I was recording my journal on tape, thinking, wow, this is going to be amazing. And then later on, I can transcribe those tapes and I'll have a complete record of my journey. I learned two things. One, to be honest, when you're speaking, it uses a different part of your brain as compared to when you're writing. When you write, your brain slows down and it kind of digs deep and sentences and paragraphs come out nicely formed. It's just pleasing. When you're speaking, it's just kind of like what I'm doing right now. It comes out from a different part of your brain. So everything that I spoke into those tapes, when you transcribe it, it was like, what do I do with that? My writing had a certain flow to it. But when you're speaking aloud, it just doesn't come out the same way. That's one thing I learned. The second thing I learned is that transcribing audio from a little cassette tape takes hundreds of hours, thousands of hours. So I started a few times. I settled down. I think when I was in Ecuador, I was in South Korea, I think, and I had my little cassette recorder and I had a laptop at that time, and I started hitting play on the recorder, listen to a sentence, write it down, listen to the next sentence. Oh, what did I say? I have to rewind, play it again, type it out. It takes eternity. So all those cassettes that I recorded, I would need at least a year nonstop work to transcribe them. You just can't do it. So I never finished transcribing them. They're in a box back in Canada as well. So anyway, yeah, Ethiopia was a big adventure. Maybe, yeah, the biggest adventure, yeah, of my life. So, yeah, Africa. I really would love to go back to Africa. I don't know if it would work for YouTube, though I'm not sure about that because I just noticed Bald and Bankrupt, the YouTube channel. I talk about his videos from time to time, and I have a lot of criticisms about the style and his way of engaging with life and people and things like that. But he's in Uganda now, and I'm so jealous because I've been dreaming about going to Uganda. And then now, Bald and Bankrupt, he got to Uganda before me, and he's posting videos from Kampala, I think. And I haven't watched the video. I'm not sure I want to. It might just annoy me to watch. And it looks like he's there with backpacker Ben. So Bald and Bankrupt and Backpacker Ben seem to have flown into Kampala together, and they're both going to be posting videos. So yeah, I'll end up watching them. I won't be able to resist. But yeah, I'd love to. Anyway, what I was saying is, I'm thinking that if I went to Africa and I tried to post YouTube videos from there, nobody would be interested in them. But Bald and Bankrupt's very first video had already in one day had something like 1.4 million views. So it's not the country that matters. It's the style of video and connecting with an audience that appreciates your style, the things that you do. Oh, I was answering that question about, do you feel lonely sometimes? No. So, and I was saying that somehow keeping a journal, and now I no longer keep a written journal, but I do write letters to people, and I've sort of switched over. You could say that what I'm doing right now is a type of journal. It's a video journal instead of a written journal, and that makes up a pretty active and a pretty satisfying social life for me. So I never feel lonely. I love getting together with people. I'm a very social person. I can get together with somebody and just talk and talk and talk for hours. There were a few people when I was in Mae Sot in Thailand, some people who saw my videos on YouTube. They came to Mae Sot just to meet up with me. And then there were a couple of them in particular. I wondered if they got more than they bargained for, because they would come to Mae Sot. We would get in touch and say, oh yeah, let's meet up for coffee tomorrow morning. We meet for coffee at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're still in that coffee shop 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're still talking, just talking and talking and talking and talking. So I have no problem hanging out with people in real life and being social. I enjoy it. And speaking of that, I don't know if I should go off on another tangent, but when I talk about a topic, it leads to other topics. And this has been a big part of my life because, so when I flew to South Korea ages ago, 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, a long time ago, to teach English, when I landed in Seoul, I found a local traditional inn. They call them yogwons. And it had become a backpacker place. What was it called? The Indaewon, I think. The Indaewon was a famous backpacker hostel in Seoul, but it was built into a traditional Korean inn. Really amazing place. And I went there, and it was filled with other foreigners. It was a backpacker hostel and was filled with English teachers from Australia, from the UK, and from Canada. So it was like an instant social life. I went to South Korea by myself. I went there alone. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything. So yeah, I landed. It was in February, freezing cold. I got on a local bus coming in from the airport. Man, I nearly died from the cold. People tell you Canada is cold. Not a chance. Korea, that is a cold country. I landed in the middle of an Arctic blizzard. It was so cold. And I got into this hostel because I just knew about it and I knew where it was. And then it became my home. And I loved it there because you didn't have to work to have a social life. We were all English teachers. We were all on our own, and all of us got jobs teaching English. Very stressful work in Korea back in those days, crazy work. It was like the wild, wild west back then. And we all go teaching all day, and then we all come back to the hostel at night into this yogwon, and then all of us, we have so many stories to tell, so many things to talk about, and we would all just pour into one room, and we've all bought beer and chips and snacks from the local shops. And these rooms were rooms where you sit on the floor, because in South Korea they have ondol heating. There's no furnace, there's no electric heaters, nothing like that. The traditional inns, they pump hot water in pipes underneath the floor. So everybody sits on the floor, everybody sleeps on the floor, there's no furniture. So we would all pile into one room and we all sit on the floor in a circle, our backs to the wall, getting our butts warm on the floor, and then we're drinking beer and we're just laughing and joking and telling all the insane stories about being in Korea and being an English teacher. And it was just like one of the most amazing times of my life. And I've repeated that experience almost every country I've been to. So when I went to Taiwan, I moved into the exact same type of backpacker hostel, even crazier than the one in Korea, if that can be believed. And I lived there the entire time I lived in Taiwan. And I had plenty of opportunities. I had enough money, I had a good income. All the other foreigners I knew who worked at my company, they would just get a condo. Eventually, you move out of the hotel, you move out of the hostel, and then you move into an apartment. You get a nice apartment on the 30th floor with the exercise room and the swimming pool. And I remember in Korea one time, I did move out of a hostel into an apartment. It was convenient, it was with other foreigners. It was like a 3-bedroom apartment and they had 1 bedroom was free and they advertised it for rent. And I thought, okay, it's time to be a normal person. And I moved into this apartment and it was like the biggest mistake I ever made, because now I felt cut off because I'm not very good at finding a social life. Now all of my friends are scattered all over Seoul, and now you've got to send them a text message. Back in those days, we were using beepers. The smartphones didn't exist yet. The best we could do was a beeper. And then you're like you have to make arrangements in advance. Oh, are you busy tonight? Hey, do you want to meet out? Do you want to meet at Stompers and have a beer? And it all became very complicated, and you end up kind of isolating yourself. So a lot of my social life came from living in these backpacker hostels. And man, you meet a lot of crazy people. That's one of the downsides. And your rooms are the size of a coffin. There's no noise insulation. You hear every sound from everywhere. You get a lot of mentally unbalanced people staying in these hostels. Crazy things can happen. But just checking my microphone, I still have power. But I mean, it's a fun life. I really enjoy the rest of my life. I would prefer to live in backpacker hostels. I wouldn't feel happy in a house or an apartment, things like that. I love backpacker hostels, and it's kind of a shame that they don't really exist anymore. They're all disappearing because people have more money and people don't live that way anymore for the most part. But anyway, in terms of being lonely, no, I've never felt lonely at all. Roy said, yes, Africa is on another level. Had similar experiences in Gambia, Madagascar, Kenya, and Morocco. Yeah, I can only imagine. I'm jealous because I've only been to Ethiopia and I've been to Guinea. And I went to each of those countries intending to travel to lots of other countries, but then I just never got around to it. Stayed in Ethiopia for like a year, and then in Guinea I had a 6-month visa for Guinea, and then I should have traveled more around Africa, but yeah, I just never did. So I'm jealous you've been to all those places. Philo Sofem. Hey Doug, greetings from Perth. Greetings back. And then he said, bald is awesome. I also like Harold Balder. Yeah, I have very mixed feelings about those guys. That's a whole different world from the one I live in. Different everything, different personality. And yeah, don't get me started on the whole bald and bankrupt and Harold Balder topic. I did talk a lot about their videos in some other behind the scenes videos where Bald recently he went on a journey through the Darien Gap. His idea was to go with the illegal migrants going through the Darien Gap from South America through Central America to the United States. And I did a real in-depth dive into that whole topic while I was watching his videos. I mean, he's good at what he does, man. People love his on-camera presence. He's entertaining. Same with Harold Balder. Yeah, he's got this whole social media thing figured out. My personal style, a little bit more, well, much slower, introspective perhaps, is not designed to appeal to such a wide audience, I guess, but I don't know. Kamal Choudhury, hi mate from Australia. Hello back. And now we have a name that, no. Yeah, I have trouble with Vietnamese. I definitely cannot say that one. It starts with Kugel. Well, Kugel Schreiber Suzamanbauer. Actually, it's not that bad once you, I'm sure I didn't have the accent, but once you spell it out. And Roy Goad, I've stayed in capsule hotels in Japan. They are very popular. I think I stayed in one in my lifetime, but I don't even remember when that was. I kind of like the, yeah, they might be a good option as long as they have a communal area. But I'm not very good with dormitories. So I do like hostel life, but I have to have my own room. I don't care how small it is. I don't care how noisy it is. I don't care how hot it is, but I need to have a door that I can close and my own bed. It can't be a bunk bed, so I can't stay in dormitories. But if I could find a hostel where you can have your own room, and then there's a big common area with big sofas that are 100 years old, that are, all the stuffing has been ripped out of them. But man, I'm telling you, the life I had in the hostel in Taipei when I went there was, that was an experience. Endless stories from being there. Yeah, it's hard to even think that was my life back in those days, but it was. And Roy wrote, Andy Lee Graham traveled constantly for 25 years, calls himself a hobo. He also travels very cheaply. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've sort of been traveling cheaply, I guess, but I never quite leaned into the hobo everything. I think one of my problems in life in general is I'm so indecisive, and I've made efforts to always keep my options open. It's like I always try to have a foot in every world at the same time. I never want to commit to one particular thing or another fully, and I've really paid the price for that. So I think even as I was sort of being a traveler and living the life of a hobo, I wasn't fully doing it. I was still thinking this is temporary, and well, I'm eventually going to go here and get a real job, and maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do that. And it would have been nice to just pick a lane. I think I would have benefited from that. Yeah, a lot of the things that I've committed myself to in my life, thinking they would lead to something, never quite led anywhere. And then I always found myself like moving in this direction for a long time with a tremendous amount of effort, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. And I end up going it's like a Monopoly game. Go back to go, do not collect do not pass free, do not collect $200. Go directly to jail, do not pass go. And I end up way back at the beginning again, starting from nothing. And then I pick another path, thinking it's going to lead to something, and things are going to get easier. And it never does. And I end up, I have no choice but to give up on that path. And then I'm starting all over from nothing again and picking another path. And I've done that my entire life. And it has been exhausting, I must say. But you also end up with a lot of different experiences. So there is that. And to be honest, it feels a little bit like my life on YouTube is one of those pathways, because I've been doing this in one form or another for 5 years. And I feel like I've been working harder on YouTube than on anything else in my entire life. I mean, I always work hard. I work too hard. Every job I've ever had, I give way too much. I put in way too much overtime. I just get obsessed with doing things, and I just put in way too many hours. I always do. And then on YouTube, I've done the very same thing, and I've been doing it for 5 years, thinking at some point a certain kind of log jam is going to give way, and then things will become easier, things will start to make sense, you'll know what you're doing, you'll find a rhythm. And after 5 years, I haven't. I feel like I'm just at a log jam, and it feels like it's almost time to reset and start all over again, because even doing YouTube hasn't really settled into a rhythm. It's been such a struggle from the very beginning until today. Nothing ever seemed to just let go, and now this is how things are, you know? Yeah, it's just, we'll see how things go. But anyway, I was talking about that whole hobo lifestyle. I never really became a full hobo either, and maybe I should have. There's a guy, Gabriel Traveler. He's another classic. He was probably if not the first, one of the very first YouTube travelers. And I think he started earning an income through publishing his own books and things like that, and then earning money through travel guides and travel books. And then he eased into YouTube. And he's not like a Bald and Bankrupt or an Itchy Boots. He's not making tens of thousands of dollars a month or whatever those guys make. But he makes a living to basically commit to a full-time life as a traveler. And he's making it work. And that would be nice. But I'm not there. It would be nice, but I don't know how they did it. As I said, for me, it's always just kind of an ongoing struggle. Yeah, Dominic Schwind. He says that name wasn't Vietnamese, it's a German word. Well, yeah, I did know that. I think what I was saying was, I can't speak any language. And lately I've been struggling with Vietnamese. So I guess what I was trying to say was, I can't even pronounce Vietnamese properly. So there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce German properly. I recognized it as German, but I guess I wasn't very clear about that. And I think I'm going to wind down this behind the scenes. I have one more comment there I'd like to reply to. Tony Scott 1, he says, it makes sense to live in the hotels instead of renting. No furniture and kitchen appliances holding us back. The price we pay for constant travel is losing contact to family, missing weddings, etc. Yeah. That absolutely makes sense to me. I have no regrets about my life of living in hostels and living in hotels. I've said this to people quite often, that my entire life seems to have been a series of tiny rooms in a basement, tiny rooms in a hostel. And I have this incredible fondness for all of those rooms. I remember them all so clearly. And whenever I think of each room, I just have this sense of like warm remembrance, like, oh, I love that room. Oh, yes, I love that room. I've had so many of these tiny rooms all over the world. Even back in Canada, I end up living in these ramshackle little rooms with very few comforts. And I enjoy them all very much. And an odd thing is that recently, not because I choose it, I seem to be living in luxury. Like this room here in Dalat is way beyond what I ever could afford back in what I keep calling the old days. This room that I'm in now, there's no air conditioning, but you don't need it in Dalat. I've got a fan, I've got a TV, I've got a fridge, I've got hot water, private bathroom, big queen-size bed, electricity, Wi-Fi. I'm living in the lap of luxury here. And it's almost like this is the minimum now. It's hard to find things unless you go super dorm room. Then you can get below this level, but I can't do the dorm room, not without all of my camera gear and laptops and things like that. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Recently, all the traveling I did in Sumatra, Malaysia, even Myanmar and Thailand, I'm staying in such nice hotels for me, far beyond what was considered normal back in the backpacker days. And I'm looking for the cheap backpacker places, but even the ones that I found, they cost the same as a room like this. It's like the pricing is unbalanced now. When I was in Sumatra, I occasionally would find like a true backpacker kind of place, and you'd think, well, this is going to be half the price of a room like this, but no, they're the same price. So I'm not going to deliberately choose a dirty, uncomfortable room if I can get a room like this at the same price. Obviously, I'm going to do that. So my level, my lifestyle level of comfort has actually gone way up in recent years, which is kind of interesting. But it wasn't by choice. It's just because the cheaper alternatives, they don't seem to be as common anymore, which is kind of interesting. All right, it is time for me to shut down. Roy said that his son met Gabriel in Greece recently by chance. That would be cool. I wouldn't mind talking with someone like Gabriel just to see how he is in real life compared to on camera. Like, is his speaking pattern, his thoughts, his personality, is it the same in real life? I think I'm exactly the same. I don't change at all, whether I'm recording on video or you meet me in real life. I think I'm exactly the same person, and I'm so comfortable speaking in front of people, speaking on camera, that I have no problem just talking. But some people, of course, they're not as comfortable, and then once they hit record on the camera, they kind of freeze up and their true personality doesn't come across. I don't know if Gabriel fits into that category. I feel like he would be the same on camera or off camera, but that's just a guess. So I'm going to head out and get some banh mi, and tomorrow is my last day in Dalat. For now, I could easily be back here very shortly, because I haven't traveled around Dalat. You know, it'd be nice to do that. So if I come back to Vietnam, maybe I could come back up here and make sure I don't get stuck. Just grab a scooter, zoom around, then continue on, go to lots of new places. But anyway, yeah, tomorrow is my last day in Dalat. Day after, I hop on a bus limousine back to Saigon, and then eventually the flight on the 29th to Saigon. And right now I'm going to go get some banh mi for a kind of a light snack, a light dinner. So one thing I learned about live streams is that if once you hit end live stream, it actually kind of cuts you off earlier than you realize. So if I want to have everything I say on video, I basically have to end the live stream and then let it like 30 seconds go and then end the live stream. So I have to wait for a minute before I hit the button. So that's it. Thank you to everybody. Yeah, it looks like there could be as many as 22 people online. That's pretty amazing. And thank you for all the great comments. It gives me lots of things to talk about, lots of tangents to go off on. And I'm so glad that I could see the live chat window. So it looks like I have that figured out, at least when I'm doing it indoors. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for keeping me company. And I will see you in the next live stream. Actually, there's a video being posted, I think, to Planet Doug in 1 hour. That is my next Coochie Tunnels video. I have it scheduled to go live today in 1 hour, basically. So 1 hour from now. But see you in that video, or see you in the next live stream. And I will be shutting down in about 30 seconds. See you next time.